The Krithax stood 12 feet tall and moved like death itself. Its black shell caught no light, and its forearms ended in claws that could slice through steel like paper. Every species in the galaxy knew the stories about these creatures. They were born killers who had never known defeat. For 3,000 years, they had hunted across the stars, leaving only silence behind them. Commander Rex Thompson had heard these stories but never believed them completely. Humans were new to space travel, and most aliens treated them like children who had found their parents' car keys. The human ship Wanderer floated near the edge of known space, searching for new worlds to explore. Rex thought the Krithax were just another scary story that aliens told to keep humans from going too far from home. The distress call changed everything. It came from Helios 7, a small mining colony on the rim of the galaxy. The signal was broken and full of static, but the words were clear enough. Colony under attack. Send help immediately. Something about a Krithax being there. Rex almost ignored it because everyone knew the Krithax were myths. Then the second message came through. This time it was just screaming and the sound of metal being torn apart. After that, nothing but silence. Rex stared at the communication screen for a long time. His crew waited for orders. The smart thing would be to call the Earth Defense Force and let them handle it. The safe thing would be to jump away and pretend they never heard the call. Rex was not always smart or safe. He ordered the ship to jump to Helios-7. The journey took 6 hours through hyperspace. When they dropped back into normal space, Rex could see the colony immediately. It should have been a bright spot of light against the dark planet surface. Instead, it looked like a dying ember. Most of the lights were out and smoke rose from several buildings. Rex called the colony but got no answer. He scanned for life signs and found nothing. The Wanderer moved closer to the planet, and Rex could see the damage through the ship's cameras. Every building had been damaged. Some were completely destroyed. Others looked like they had been carefully taken apart piece by piece. The mining equipment was scattered across the ground in strange patterns. In the center of the colony stood a single figure. It was too far away to see clearly, but Rex knew what it was. The shape was wrong for any known species except one. The Krithax was real, and it was still there. Rex's second in command was a woman named Captain Lisa Wong. She had served in 3 wars and was not easily scared. When she saw the readings from the planet, her face went pale. She told Rex they should leave immediately and call for backup. A single Krithax could destroy their entire ship without effort. Rex understood her fear but could not accept it. Down on that planet was proof that humans were not alone in their capacity for violence. There was something worse than humans out there, and it had just killed an entire colony. Rex could not let that stand without at least trying to do something about it. He told Lisa to keep the ship ready for immediate departure. If he was not back in 2 hours, she should jump back to Earth and report what they had found. Lisa argued with him, but Rex had made up his mind. He grabbed his sidearm and headed for the shuttle bay. The shuttle was a small craft designed for short trips between ships and planets. Rex had piloted it hundreds of times, but never into a situation like this. As he flew down toward the colony, he could see the destruction more clearly. The Krithax had not just killed everyone. It had arranged their bodies in patterns. It had turned their buildings into sculptures. This was not random violence. This was art. Rex landed the shuttle outside the colony and stepped onto the planet surface. The air was breathable but smelled of smoke and something else he could not identify. He walked through the empty streets and saw things that would stay with him forever. The Krithax had not just destroyed the colony. It had transformed it into something beautiful and terrible. Every piece of debris was placed with purpose. Every broken wall formed part of a larger design. Rex had studied art in college, and he recognized what he was seeing. This was not the work of a mindless killer. This was the creation of an artist who used death as their medium. He found the bodies arranged in the central square. They were not mutilated or tortured. They had been killed quickly and then positioned as part of the overall design. Rex counted 47 colonists. Men, women, and children from a dozen different species. All of them had died to create this. Monument, Rex felt anger building inside him, but also something else. Respect. He hated himself for feeling it, but could not deny what his eyes were showing him. The Krithax was a monster, but it was also an artist of incredible skill. A shadow fell across him and Rex looked up. The Krithax stood on top of a damaged building, looking down at him. Its forearms hung loosely at its sides and its head tilted, as if studying him. Rex had expected to feel terror when he finally saw one of these creatures. Instead, he felt curiosity. The Krithax jumped down from the building and landed 20 feet away from Rex, up close. It was even more impressive. Its shell was not just black, but seemed to absorb light. Its claws were longer than Rex's fingers and sharp enough to cut through anything. Its eyes were compound like an insect's, but showed intelligence that no insect possessed. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Rex kept his hand on his weapon, but did not draw it. The Krithax watched him with those strange eyes. Finally, it spoke in perfect standard galactic. The voice was like grinding stone, but the words were clear. It asked Rex why he had come here. Why he was not running like all the others. Rex thought about lying, but decided on the truth. He said he had come to see what a real monster looked like. The Krithax made a sound that might have been laughter. It told Rex that he was looking at one. Then it asked if Rex was ready to die. Rex looked around at the artistic destruction surrounding them. He looked at the careful placement of every piece of debris. He looked at the monument the Krithax had, made from 47 lives. Then he looked back at the creature and gave his answer. He said he was ready to try something different first. The Krithax had sensed the human approaching long before the shuttle landed. It had been feeding on the fear of the colonists for hours before finally ending their lives. Fear made the hunt more satisfying, but these miners had provided little sport. They had surrendered too quickly and begged too much. The Krithax preferred prey that fought back. This human was different. He walked through the colony without showing fear. His heartbeat was steady and his breathing was controlled. The Krithax watched him from the shadows as he examined the artwork. Most beings who saw the arrangements either ran away screaming or stood frozen in horror. This human studied them like he was in a museum. When the human stopped in the central square, the Krithax decided to reveal itself. It climbed to the top of a damaged building and looked down at the small figure below. The human looked up and met its gaze without flinching. The Krithax felt something it had not experienced in centuries. Interest. The jump down from the building was easy for a creature of its size and strength. The Krithax landed with enough force to crack the ground, but made no threatening moves. It wanted to study this human before killing him. There was something unusual about this one, and the Krithax had learned to pay attention to unusual things. The human kept his hand on his weapon but did not draw it. Smart, the weapon would be useless against Krithax armor anyway, but drawing it would have ended the conversation immediately. Instead, the human just stood there and waited. The Krithax appreciated patience in prey. When the Krithax spoke, it used standard galactic because most species understood it. The human answered in the same language, but with an accent the Krithax had never heard before. The words were honest and direct. No begging or bargaining, just truth. The Krithax found this refreshing. The human said he wanted to see what a real monster looked like. The Krithax told him he was looking at one. Then it asked if the human was ready to die. The answer surprised it. The human said he wanted to try something different first. Then he did the last thing the Krithax expected. He sat down on a piece of broken concrete and put his weapon on the ground beside him. His hands were empty and his posture was relaxed. He looked up at the Krithax and smiled. The Krithax had killed thousands of beings across hundreds of worlds. None of them had ever smiled at it before. It stood there with its forearms raised to strike and tried to understand what was happening. This human was either completely insane or incredibly brave. Possibly both. The human reached into his pocket and the Krithax tensed. But instead of a weapon, the human pulled out a small recording device. He activated it and set it on the ground between them. The red light showed it was working. The Krithax asked what the human was doing. The answer made it pause. The human said he was documenting the Krithax, recording everything for others to see. The Krithax asked why he would do such a thing. The human's answer changed everything. He said the Krithax was not just a killer. He said it was an artist. He pointed to the arrangements around them and talked about the careful placement of each piece. He talked about the way the destruction formed patterns and told stories. He said the Krithax was not destroying civilizations, but transforming them into something greater. No one had ever called the Krithax an artist before. It had always thought of itself as a hunter and killer. But as the human spoke, the Krithax began to see its work differently. The arrangements were not random. Every piece was placed with purpose. Every death served the greater design. The human stood up slowly and walked closer. The Krithax could have killed him easily but did not move. The human stopped just outside the reach of its claws and continued talking. He said every species in the galaxy called the Krithax a monster, but they were wrong. They only saw the death and missed the purpose behind it. The human pointed to a section of twisted metal that formed the spiral pattern. He said it reminded him of a galaxy. He pointed to the arranged bodies and said they looked like constellations. He saw meaning in everything the Krithax had created. He saw beauty in the destruction. The Krithax felt something stirring inside. It that had been dormant for millennia. Recognition, understanding, this human saw what no one else had ever seen. The Krithax was not just ending lives. It was creating meaning from chaos. It was making art from death. The human asked the Krithax if it had a name. The question caught it off guard. It had not used its name in so long it had almost forgotten. The name carried memories of a time before the hunting began. A time when it had been something other than death incarnate. The Krithax told the human its name was Corvith. The human repeated it carefully, pronouncing each syllable correctly. Then he introduced himself as Rex Thompson of the Earth vessel Wanderer. He said Earth was the human homeworld and that humans were new to the galaxy. Rex asked Corvith how long it had been creating these arrangements. Corvith had to think about it. Time moved differently when you live for millennia. It had been killing and arranging for over 3,000 years. Each world was a new canvas. Each species provided different materials to work with. Rex nodded as if this made perfect sense. He said humans also created art from destruction. He talked about war memorials and monuments built from battlefield debris. He said humans took the worst moments of their history and transformed them into something meaningful, something that honored both victory and loss. Corvith had never heard of another species doing this. It had always believed it was alone in seeing beauty in destruction. The idea that humans might understand its work was almost impossible to accept. Yet here was proof standing right in front of it. Rex pulled out a holographic projector and activated it. Images filled the air between them, human sculptures made from weapons, monuments built from the ruins of destroyed cities, art created from the raw materials of war and suffering. Corvith studied each image carefully. The human art was different from its own, but the underlying principle was the same. They took destruction and gave it meaning. They transformed chaos into beauty. They created something lasting from something temporary. For the first time in its long existence, Corvith felt less alone. It looked at Rex with new understanding. This human was not just prey, he was a fellow artist, someone who could see past the surface to the deeper truth beneath. Corvith lowered its arms slowly. The killing stance relaxed into something more neutral. Rex noticed the change and smiled again. He asked if Corvith would like to see more human art. He said there were others who would understand. Artists and architects and sculptors who created meaning from chaos. The offer hung in the air between them. Corvith had spent 3 millennia alone, hunting and killing and creating monuments that no one understood. The possibility of finding others who might appreciate its work was almost too good to believe. Rex waited patiently for an answer. He did not push or demand, he simply offered and waited. Corvith appreciated that patience. It showed respect. Rex could see the change in the Krithax. When he started talking about art, the creature's posture shifted from predatory to curious. Its compound eyes focused on him with new intensity. This was not the mindless killer from the stories. This was an intelligent being who had been misunderstood for thousands of years. Rex kept talking because he could see it was working. He pointed to different parts of the colony and explained what he saw in each arrangement. The way the debris formed flowing lines that led the eye from one section to another. The way the bodies were positioned to create focal points throughout the design. The careful balance between destruction and creation. Corvith listened to every word. Rex could see the creature processing each observation and comparing it to its own intentions. When Rex described a twisted piece of metal as resembling a flower reaching toward the sky, Corvith made a sound that might have been agreement. When Rex talked about the overall composition having rhythm and movement, Corvith nodded slightly. Rex realized he was looking at the galaxy's greatest living artist. The fact that Corvith used death as a medium did not change the skill involved. Every element was placed with purpose. Every detail served the larger vision. The scale and complexity were beyond anything humans had ever attempted, but Rex also understood that Corvith was trapped by its own nature. The Krithaks were born predators. They needed to hunt and kill to survive. Corvith had found a way to transform that biological necessity into art, but it was still bound by the need to take lives. Rex wondered if there might be another way. He asked Corvith about the creative process. How did it decide on each arrangement? Did it plan everything in advance or let the design develop naturally? Corvith's answers revealed a sophisticated, artistic mind that had been developing its craft over millennia. Corvith explained that each world presented different challenges. The terrain affected the overall composition. The number and types of inhabitants determined the available materials. The local architecture provided constraints that had to be worked around. Every piece was a unique problem to be solved. Rex found himself genuinely fascinated by the technical aspects. He asked about specific techniques and Corvith was eager to explain them. The creature had been working in isolation for so long that having someone to discuss its methods with was clearly a relief. They talked. Rex began to understand the deeper tragedy of Corvith's existence. The creature was not evil in any conventional sense. It was an artist driven by biological imperatives it could not control. Every world it visited became a canvas, but that canvas required the destruction of entire civilizations. Rex asked if Corvith ever felt regret about the lives it took. The question seemed to surprise the creature. It thought for a long time before answering. Corvith said it felt sadness that the beings could not appreciate what their deaths contributed to. They saw only the ending and missed the greater purpose. This gave Rex an idea. He asked Corvith if it had ever considered working with living subjects instead of dead ones. Could the same artistic principles be applied without killing anyone? Corvith seemed confused by the suggestion. It had never occurred to it that art could be created without death. Rex pulled up more images on his holographic projector. He showed Corvith examples of human performance art where living people formed complex patterns and movements. He showed time-lapse videos of cities being built and rebuilt over centuries. He showed natural processes like erosion and growth that created beauty through change rather than destruction. Corvith studied these images with intense concentration. Rex could see it trying to understand how the same principles it used could be applied differently. The concept of voluntary participation was completely foreign to its experience. Every being it had encountered had been prey to be hunted, killed. Rex explained that humans often work together to create large-scale artworks. Thousands of people might participate in a single project, each contributing their small part to the greater whole. The participants understood their role and took pride in the final result. They were artists themselves, not just materials to be used. This idea seemed to intrigue Corvith more than anything else Rex had said. The creature asked many questions about human collaborative art. How did so many individuals coordinate their efforts? How did they maintain the overall vision while allowing for individual expression? How did they resolve conflicts between different artistic viewpoints? Rex answered as best he could, drawing on his knowledge of human history and culture. He talked about cathedral builders who worked for generations on single projects. He described modern installations that required the participation of entire communities. He explained how humans found meaning in being part of something larger than themselves. Corvith listened to all of this with growing excitement. Rex could see the creature's mind working, trying to imagine how these principles might be applied to its own work. The possibility of creating art with living collaborators rather than dead materials was revolutionary, but Rex also knew that changing 3,000 years of behavior would not be easy. Corvith's hunting instincts were deeply ingrained, even if it wanted to try a different approach, the biological drives might be too strong to overcome. Rex needed to find a way to redirect those drives rather than suppress them. He asked Corvith about the hunting itself. What aspects of it provided the most satisfaction? Was it the chase, the kill, or the arrangement afterward? Corvith's answer was revealing. The creature said the kill was necessary but not particularly enjoyable. The real satisfaction came from the planning and the final creation. This gave Rex hope. If the hunting was just a means to an end, it might be possible to find alternative means. He suggested that Corvith could hunt for willing participants instead of unwilling victims, people who wanted to be part of something greater than themselves. Artists who would understand and appreciate the vision. Corvith was skeptical. It could not imagine anyone voluntarily participating in something that had always required force. Rex assured it that humans were different. They often sought out challenges and dangers for the sake of art or adventure. Some humans would absolutely volunteer for the chance to work with the galaxy's greatest artist. Rex could see Corvith struggling with these new concepts. The creature had spent so long thinking of itself as a solitary predator that the idea of collaboration was almost incomprehensible. But Rex could also see curiosity and hope beginning to overcome skepticism. He made an offer that surprised them. Both, Rex said he would volunteer to be Corvith's first collaborative subject, not as prey to be killed, but as a partner to be worked with. They could create something together that would demonstrate the potential of this new approach. Corvith stared at him with those compound eyes for a long time. Rex held his breath and waited for the response. Everything depended on whether the creature was willing to try something completely different from everything it had ever known. Finally, Corvith spoke. It said the idea was impossible, but also intriguing. It asked what Rex had in mind. Rex smiled and began to explain his plan for transforming the colony into something new without destroying anything else. Something that would honor both the dead and the living. Something that would show the galaxy what cooperation between species could achieve. As Rex talked, he watched Corvith's posture change again. The predatory stance was completely gone now, replaced by the focused attention of one artist listening to another. For the first time in millennia, Corvith was considering the possibility that there might be a better way to create its art. The conversation continued for hours as they worked out the details together. The hours passed quickly as Rex and Corvith discussed possibilities neither had imagined before. The sun was setting over the ruined colony, casting long shadows across the artistic arrangements. The light changed the entire composition, revealing new patterns and relationships between elements. Rex pointed this out and Corvith nodded with something that might have been pleasure. Rex learned that Corvith had been alone for longer than human civilization had existed. The creature had no memory of its own species or homeworld. It had been wandering the galaxy since before humans discovered fire, creating its monuments and moving on. No one had ever understood its work. No one had ever seen the beauty in what it created. The isolation had been complete until this moment. Corvith described it as living in a universe where no one spoke the same language. It could create meaning but could never share that meaning with others. The art existed but remained invisible to everyone except its creator. Rex felt a deep sadness for this ancient being. Humans needed connection and community to thrive. The idea of spending millennia completely alone was almost unbearable. He could understand why Corvith had continued its destructive pattern for so long. What else could it do when no one understood its purpose? But Rex also saw an opportunity. Humans were natural collaborators. They built societies and cultures by working together. They created shared meanings and common purposes. If Corvith could learn to work with others instead of against them, its art could reach levels never before. Imagine. Rex suggested they start small. Instead of trying to change everything at once, they could experiment with collaborative techniques on a limited scale. The ruined colony could serve as their first joint project. They could transform it from a monument to death into something that celebrated both destruction and renewal. Corvith was intrigued but uncertain. It asked how they could improve on what already existed. The current arrangement was the result of careful planning and precise execution. Every element was exactly where it belonged. What could collaboration add that individual effort had not already achieved? Rex walked to the center of the arrangement and looked around. He could see what Corvith meant. The composition was flawless from an individual perspective, but it was also static and closed. There was no room for growth or change. No possibility for others to add their own contributions. He explained to Corvith that human art often evolved over time. Multiple generations of artists might work on the same project, each adding their own interpretation while respecting what came before. The result was something richer and more complex than any individual could create alone. Rex pointed to the spiral pattern formed by twisted metal. He suggested they could extend it outward, creating new sections that connected to the original design. Each new section could be created collaboratively, with different beings contributing their unique perspectives and abilities. Corvith studied the spiral with new eyes. It could see how the pattern might be extended without destroying the original vision. The idea of growth rather than completion was foreign but appealing. Most of its works were finished the moment the last body was positioned. This would be something that could continue indefinitely. Rex contacted his ship and asked Lisa to send down some basic construction materials. Nothing elaborate, just tools and supplies for minor modifications. Lisa was reluctant to send anything that might help the Krithax, but Rex convinced her this was an opportunity for peaceful contact with a potentially valuable ally. When the supplies arrived, Rex began demonstrating human construction techniques. He showed Corvith how materials could be shaped and joined without violence, how structures could be built up rather than torn down, how creation could happen without destruction. Corvith watched with fascination as Rex assembled a simple framework that extended the spiral pattern. A human worked slowly and carefully, explaining each step and asking for input. This collaborative process was completely new to Corvith, but increasingly interesting. When Rex invited Corvith to add its own elements to the construction, the creature hesitated. Its claws were designed for cutting and tearing, not for delicate assembly work. But Rex showed it how its natural abilities could be adapted for creative purposes. The precision that made Corvith deadly could also make it an excellent craftsman. Working together, they extended the spiral pattern outward from the original arrangement. Rex provided the construction techniques while Corvith contributed aesthetic, vision, and planning. The result was something neither could have created alone. It maintained the power and elegance of Corvith's original work while adding new possibilities for expansion and collaboration. As they worked, Rex asked Corvith about its earliest memories. The creature described a time before the hunting began when it had been part of a larger community. The memories were fragmented and unclear, but they suggested that Corvith had not always been a solitary predator. This revelation changed everything. If Corvith had once lived peacefully with others, it might be possible to do so again. The hunting behavior might be learned rather than innate. With patience and practice, it could potentially be unlearned or redirected. Rex shared his own memories of learning to be an artist. He had started with simple projects and gradually developed more complex skills. The process required patience and acceptance of failure. Many early attempts had been disasters, but each failure taught him something valuable for the next attempt. Corvith found this concept of learning through failure particularly interesting. Its own artistic development had been a solitary process of trial and error spread across millennia. The idea of having guidance and feedback from others was appealing but also frightening. What if others did not understand its vision? What if collaboration compromised the purity of its work? Rex assured Corvith that good collaboration enhanced rather than diminished individual vision. Each participant brought their own strengths and perspectives, creating possibilities that no one could achieve alone. The key was finding partners who shared common goals while respecting different approaches. As the night progressed, they continued working and talking. Rex learned more about Corvith's artistic philosophy and shared his own understanding of human creativity. Despite their different backgrounds and methods, they found surprising areas of agreement. Both believed that art should have meaning beyond mere decoration. Both valued precision and careful planning. Both saw beauty in things that others might consider ugly or frightening. Both had spent their lives trying to create something that would outlast their own existence. The collaboration on the spiral extension was going well. Rex could see Corvith gaining confidence with each new element added to the structure. The creature's natural abilities were indeed well suited for construction work when properly directed. Its 4 arms allowed it to work on multiple aspects simultaneously while its precision ensured perfect alignment. More importantly, Rex could see Corvith beginning to understand the emotional satisfaction of collaborative creation. The creature had always worked alone, knowing that no one would appreciate the final result. Now it was creating something with a partner who not only understood the vision, but actively contributed to its realization. For the first time in millennia, Corvith was not alone. The isolation that had defined its existence was beginning to crack. Rex could see hope growing in those compound eyes. Hope that there might be another way to live. Hope that its art could be appreciated and understood. Hope that it might find a place among the living rather than dwelling always among the dead. The night was far from over, and there was much more work to be done. But already something fundamental had changed. The galaxy's deadliest predator was learning to create rather than destroy, and a human had shown it the way. Dawn broke over the transformed colony as Rex and Corvith completed their collaborative extension to the spiral pattern. The new structure caught the morning light and cast intricate shadows that danced across the original arrangement. The effect was stunning. What had been a static monument to death was now a dynamic celebration of renewal and possibility. Rex stepped back to admire their work. The extension they had built together was clearly different from Corvith's original creation, but it complemented, rather than competed with it. The two sections spoke to each other across the space between them, creating a dialogue between old and new, individual and collaborative, destruction and construction. Corvith stood motionless for a long time, studying what they had created together. Rex could see the creature processing this new experience of shared creation. For 3,000 years, Corvith had worked alone, never knowing if others would understand its vision. Now it had proof that understanding was possible. The silence stretched on until Rex began to worry that he had somehow offended the ancient artist. But when Corvith finally moved, it was not with aggression or disappointment. Instead, the massive creature slowly lowered itself to the ground in front of Rex. Its 4 arms spread wide and its head touched the debris-covered earth. Rex had never seen anything like it. This gesture had no equivalent in human culture, but its meaning was unmistakable. The galaxy's most feared predator was bowing before him, not in defeat or submission, but in recognition and respect. In acknowledgement that it had found something it had not known it was searching for. Rex approached the bowed form carefully. He reached out and gently touched Corvith's carapace. The surface was warm and surprisingly smooth. Rex could feel a slight vibration, perhaps from Corvith's equivalent of a heartbeat. This close, he could see that the creature's shell was not uniformly black, but showed subtle patterns of darker and lighter areas. Corvith spoke without raising its head. Its voice was softer than before, filled with an emotion Rex could not identify. The creature said it had not expected to find understanding among the younger species. It had assumed that only time and experience could produce the perspective necessary to appreciate its work. Rex told Corvith that understanding was not about age or experience. It was about being willing to see past surface appearances to the deeper truth beneath. Humans might be young compared to the Krithaks, but they had their own forms of wisdom. They understood that beauty could be found in unexpected places and that art could transform even the most terrible experiences into something meaningful. Corvith raised its head and looked at Rex with those compound eyes. The creature asked a question that surprised them both. It wanted to know if Rex would be willing to leave his ship and his crew to travel with it, to learn more about collaborative art and to help transform the monuments on other worlds. The offer was tempting, but Rex knew he could not abandon his responsibilities. He had a crew depending on him and a mission to complete, but he also recognized an opportunity that might never come again, the chance to establish peaceful contact between humans and one of the galaxy's most feared species. Rex suggested a compromise. He would return to Earth and report what had happened on Helios 7. He would recommend that Earth send a team of artists and scientists to work with Corvith on developing new forms of collaborative art. In the meantime, Corvith could begin the process of transforming its existing monuments into something that honored both the dead and the living. Corvith considered this proposal carefully. The idea of working with multiple humans was both exciting and terrifying. It had barely learned to collaborate with one partner. Could it handle the complexity of multiple viewpoints and approaches? What if the other humans did not understand its vision as clearly as Rex did? Rex assured Corvith that he would personally select the team members. He would choose artists who could appreciate unconventional beauty and scientists who could understand the technical challenges involved. All of them would be volunteers who genuinely wanted to participate in this unprecedented project. The recording device Rex had activated hours earlier was still running. Everything they had discussed was being preserved for posterity. Rex realized that this conversation would change how humans viewed both art and alien contact. The implications were staggering. Rex asked Corvith if it would be willing to share its story with others. Not just the artistic philosophy, but the personal history of isolation and longing for understanding. Humans responded strongly to individual narratives. They needed to see Corvith as a being with feelings and motivations rather than just a monster from their nightmares. Corvith was hesitant about revealing so much personal information. It had learned to be secretive over the millennia, never knowing when someone might try to use its history against it. But Rex pointed out that secrecy had contributed to the fear and misunderstanding surrounding the Krithax. Openness might be the key to changing those perceptions. As they talked, Rex began to understand the true significance of what had happened. This was more than just first contact between humans and an alien species. It was proof that even the most fundamental differences could be bridged. Through mutual respect and willingness to listen, the implications extended far beyond art or even human-alien relations. If a species as different from humans as the Krithax could learn to collaborate rather than destroy, what possibilities existed for other conflicts? How many wars might be prevented if opposing sides could find common ground in unexpected places? Rex thought about the stories this moment would generate. The tale of how the galaxy's deadliest predator bowed before a human who saw art where others saw only death. How understanding and respect could transform ancient patterns of violence into new forms of creation. How two very different beings could find partnership across the vast gulf of species and experience. The sun was fully up now, and Rex knew his crew would be getting worried. He needed to return to the ship and begin the process of reporting what had happened. But he also knew that leaving would be difficult. He and Corvith had formed a connection that transcended species boundaries. They were partners now in a way that neither had experienced before. Corvith seemed to understand Rex's dilemma. The creature stood and moved to the edge of the colony where Rex's shuttle waited. It said that parting was necessary but not permanent. The work they had begun together would continue even when they were separated. The principles they had discovered would guide future collaborations. Rex activated his communicator and told Lisa to prepare for his return. He gathered his equipment and took one last look around the transformed colony. The original monument was still there, honoring the dead colonists in Corvith's unique way. But now it was part of something larger, a symbol of the possibility for change and growth even in the darkest circumstances. As Rex walked toward his shuttle, Corvith followed. The creature wanted to see him safely away. At the shuttle door they paused. Rex extended his hand in the human gesture of farewell. Corvith carefully touched Rex's hand with the tip of one claw. The contact was gentle, despite the obvious potential for harm. Rex climbed into the shuttle and prepared for departure. Through the window he could see Corvith standing motionless in the morning light. The creature raised one arm in what might have been a wave. Rex returned the gesture and fired up the shuttle engines. As he flew back toward the Wanderer, Rex looked down at the colony one more time. From this height, he could see the full scope of what Corvith had created. The original arrangement was even more impressive from above, revealing patterns and relationships that were invisible from ground level. The collaborative extension they had built together seemed small by comparison, but it pointed toward infinite possibilities. Rex knew that everything had changed. The recording of their conversation would spread throughout human space and eventually to other species. The story of the monster who became an artist would challenge assumptions and open new possibilities for cooperation across species lines. Most importantly, Corvith was no longer alone. The ancient creature had found understanding and partnership after millennia of isolation. The galaxy's deadliest predator had learned to create rather than destroy, and a human had shown it the way. The shuttle docked with the Wanderer and Rex, prepared to face his crew's questions. He had a long report to write and many decisions to make. But first, he wanted to review the recording of his conversation with Corvith. The galaxy needed to hear this story. They needed to understand why. The deadliest predator had bowed before a human who saw art where others saw only death.